Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Parenthood and Relationship Podcast. Before we dive into the interview with Lodovica Guidarelli, let me share a few details about what makes this episode special, why you should listen in, and give you a little bit of background on this guest expert that we have with us today. Lodovica shares powerful, grounding insights on why couples drift apart, especially after major life transitions like parenthood, for example, and how love languages, which is the theme of this month, unspoken expectations, and co leadership can play a role. I want you to really listen in for the analogy that she uses about running a relationship, kind of like we do a business and how helpful that can actually be. But I think that you will also find very interesting what she says about neurodivergence in relationships, something that we have not touched on this podcast so far, and I think is very important. Finally, we wrap up the episode by talking about how couples who are stuck in a loop of arguments and they seem to be going in circles talking about the same things over and over again, trying strategies, but them not working. And Lodovica gives us the steps that we need to consider when we are trying to get close again. This episode is packed with compassionate, practical wisdom, and I hope that it will resonate. Before we dive in, let me tell you a little bit about Lodovica Guidarelli. Lodovica is an Italian American marriage and family therapist. She's married and she has two children. She works with couples both online and in person in the state of California. In her work, she integrates somatic approaches as well as trauma approaches such as EMDR, internal family systems, one of my absolute favorites, as well as brain spotting and narrative therapy. But let's hear more from her. Let's dive in. Hi there. If this is your first time here, welcome to the Parenthood and Relationship Podcast. I'm your host, Markella Kaplani, a psychologist, a parenthood and relationship coach, and a parent myself. Together, we explore the transformative journey of parenthood and its profound impact on our relationship with ourselves, our partners, and our children so that we can be present and show up as we envision without having to do more. Let's get into today's episode. Hi, Ludovica. It's so nice to have you.
Hello. Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure. Excited to be in this space with you.
So, I made a small introduction about you, but I would like for you to tell us a little bit about your work as a marriage and family therapist and how you support couples in navigating the emotional disconnect.
So, I am a marriage and family therapist. I work primarily online, although I also see clients in person in the state of California. I see couples at different stages of their relationship, and I also see couples that are in consensual, non-monogamous relationship. I love this work, and I support them in different ways. I find that couples come to me for different reasons and different stages, different moments. I support, first of all, slowing things down and reassessing their goals, their values, their purposes, their intentions, their hopes. And then as that becomes more clear, we work around communication styles and I integrate somatic practices such as internal family systems, brain spotting, EMDR, narrative therapy for them to be able to reconnect, first of all, with themselves and then be able to communicate with their partner and reconnect in that way. I think the reconnection with the couple starts first with the reconnection with ourselves.
Yes, I agree 100% with that. I did want to ask you what led you to be passionate in working with couples. I like to ask that because the way that I arrived at couples, it wasn't something that I had intended in the beginning. It wasn't something that I thought I would be doing, but it's something that knocked on my doorstep in a way. And I found that I absolutely love it exactly for the same reason that you mentioned before, that it is so interrelated. The way that I connect to myself has so much to do with the way that I connect to my partner. So I would like to know your story, how you decided to be doing this.
In my work, I find that it's always a mix of personal and professional. It's very hard to disconnect the two. So there is a little bit of my own personal story. Both my husband and I migrated to the US when we were very young. And so we went through so many changes personally through the process of migrating, different stages really of our relationship, from being very young and moving to a different country to getting married, having children. And so I really saw how the different contexts and the profound changes that we went through individually and what it takes to continue to be committed to a relationship when everything else around us changes and inside of us changes. And then when I started to entertain the idea of becoming a family therapist, I honestly was also thinking about doing individual work mostly. But part of my clinical background required to do couples work. And I just noticed how much I loved it. It brings me to see potential, to see couples that love each other and no longer know how to communicate that to each other. And so being able to really recreate a context to connect seems extremely valuable to me. I guess that's a short way of answering your question.
Yeah, it's beautiful. For me, I think it was basically just a client of mine decided to invite her husband to come forward and share some information. And that was an eye opener. I assumed that you only get one perspective when you only see one person, but this is a whole new world that's opening now that I can see his perspective on things and how he understands what's happening for her and for them. And then the next time it happened, I was working with a mom who was very distressed, but she told me my biggest issue is my marriage. And the thing that I care about most, even though I lack support, even though I feel unworthy as a mom, even though we're working on these things, the thing that I really want is to salvage my marriage. So, can I bring my husband? Can we work together? And as we did that work, I was amazed at how many things we can reach if we also work on the relational aspect, because a lot of times, like you said, it starts from us, but there are so many things that we can see about us because of how we project onto others. And the difficulties that we have in relating and connecting with the other person says a lot about the internal struggles that we also face. So it's twofold. It's very interesting work. So I wanted to ask you, what are patterns or themes of issues that you may have noticed couples facing as they come to you?
Yeah, so some common themes or the ways in which couples describe it when they come to me is communication issues. We're not understanding each other. We're not connecting. I feel emotionally disconnected. Lack of intimacy is definitely another reason. And oftentimes differing parenting styles gets in between. Different ideas about how to parent can also become an issue.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that people who are listening are going to connect with at least one of these things. And it can get very tough when we become parents. So, in your experience, what are some of the things that lead to these issues, to this emotional disconnect that couples are facing? Why are so many couples? Because I hear this a lot. Divorce rates have risen. People are just egotistical. Nobody cares anymore about relationships. They just move on. And so I'm wondering, what is your perspective? Why do couples face these issues that you just mentioned?
It could be many different factors and reasons. I would like to name maybe a few recurring culprits, so to say, that I can identify. Oftentimes, I find that there is lack of explicit communication around expectations, roles, and needs. And I see that especially with marriage, right? Like we assume that things will work out because we reached that goal that maybe we've been dreaming about for a long time. And instead, it becomes taken for granted. The other one could be also the changing of the roles, the changing of the context, especially when children come in the picture. We continue to operate according to ideas or values or expectations that maybe were working before the children, but they are no longer working, but we never really said it out loud. And so when we start assigning meaning to dynamics that are no longer working, then we start shaping negative ideas ideas about our partners. We start calling them names, losing hope, feeling resentment. Then a lot of things start piling up. And so just reconnecting with expectations, being able to name them, being able to sit down and say, hey, where are we going? What it is that we're wanting for ourselves, what it is that we're wanting for our family, reconnecting really with needs, visions. Lack of time is another big problem. Contemporary families were all super busy, super scheduled. There's really little time to check in. So being intentional to slow down and check in with our partners and with the needs also becomes very important.
I really like what you said about marriage. A lot of times
Mhm.
it does happen, and it comes from very positive intention. The couple feels like now we are committed because we achieved that goal, like you said. And
Mhm.
so I can depend on this love that we have developed. And it, I think, becomes very disappointing when they realize that I let it go because there were so many other things running. And this happens especially in parenthood. There's so many other things that get in
Mhm.
the way. And so I feel like, okay, I can let this go, not because I don't care about it, but because I think it's so strong that it will hold us. And then when I realized that it didn't, instead of simply saying, okay, I did let go, let's come back and repair, I
Mhm.
also assign meaning to the fact that, oh, so it wasn't so strong in the first place because it didn't hold us. It was supposed to hold us. It was supposed to be able to naturally flow without any damage. So, what does that say about our connection? Have you seen that happen?
Oh my gosh, all the times. Assigning meaning. Oh, what does it mean? We're no longer connecting. It means that we weren't meant to be good together. It means that we're not the right fit for each other. Like jumping to those kind of conclusions actually is what makes things worse. Sometimes I use the example of the business with couples to slow this process down. I say, hey, can you imagine running a business without having weekly business meetings on the status of the business, checking in with the plan? Can you imagine a business succeeding just because we said we have a business? And so then the business will run on its own. And obviously, my couple saying, no, like that business would fail fairly quickly. I don't use the business model to reduce or take the romantic aspect of the relationship, but the intentional aspect of the business model is what I'm paying attention to. We make intentional choices for a business for it to be successful. And for the couple, it's the same. So let's go back. What intentional choices are we making to make this couple work? Let's set up a business meeting. And so instead of calling it a business meeting, maybe we do come up with some ideas about can we create regular check-in that work with your schedule, with your needs, with your family structure.
I love the analogy with the business because we can understand very clearly that this is not something that would work. And it's a little saddening to think because as you were saying it, I was imagining it's the same thing if you told me if you stopped being there for your son for a week or for a month or for a year, would you expect that to go well? No. If you stop going to the gym for a week, for a month, for a year, do you expect your body to just sustain the work you've done? No. In so many other settings, the clear answer is no. But for some reason, which is so interesting to me, we seem to think that if our love is strong enough, it should be able to hold. And so I love the point that you are making. It's absolutely critical to go back and reconsider why would I assume that only in this area in my life I can completely let go and it can be okay. And it's not to guilt trip couples who have lost touch because they prioritized other things, because life took them in different areas for some time to say, oh, you guys are doomed and why did you do that? But it is to say that, okay, if it happened, let's not assign extra meaning, which then makes it 2, 3, 4 times harder. We can just work on how do we repair without the guilt, the shame, the assigning of unrealistic expectations.
Yeah.
I'm thinking this episode is about love languages as well. So the theme of this month is love languages. And they've become very popular among couples. They have been helping a lot of people learn more about themselves and then learn more about how they relate to one another. And so a lot of people start to speak in terms of love languages and say, maybe that's what the problem is. I have a different love language. I am trying to meet your love language. Are you trying to really understand me and connect with me? What do you see in this aspect of love languages?
Yeah, first of all, again, going back and making sure that our individual love languages have been communicated. Are we aware? Is there awareness about what it is that we need to feel loved? And also, even what does it look like to feel loved? For each one of us, how do we define it? How do we feel it? How do we know that we feel loved, that we feel connected? And staying open to changes, right? Because that can change through time, can change in different contexts. And so, again, not assuming that just because something worked in the past will continue to work. So, having that kind of check in with each other's love languages. One other thing that I've noticed about love languages is sometimes when we think about, for instance, acts of services, gender roles and unspoken expectation get mixed up and complicate things. I'll make an example to make it more clear. Maybe one partner would say, "Hey, I don't feel connected. I don't feel heard." And then the partner will say, I feel alone. I feel that I'm carrying the emotional load. And then the other partner will say, "But I'm doing the dishes, I'm cooking, I'm doing the laundry, I'm doing all of these things for you." And the message gets stuck right there, like almost confusing the task with their way of communicating love when the partner can be asking for partnership in planning, in envisioning. They may be asking for less time but more presence. And here I utilize the metaphor of a parent and a child. Sometimes in some dynamics, I see couples ending up relating to each other, not as partners, but more in a parent child type of relationship where there is somebody who's taking the initiative, somebody that is doing all the scheduling, that is doing all the planning, and the other partner that is executing, and they feel that the execution is enough. That's what I'm doing. I'm executing. And sometimes maybe that is really not enough. And maybe the point is less around executing, but more of feeling that we are leading this relationship together. We are a team rather than one of us is the boss and the other one is executing, because it generates lots of loneliness and isolation for the one that feels that is leading and holding the threads of the whole thing, and the other person is executing. So, yes, it is support. So we don't want to say there's no value in executing, but the partnership and the leading together sometimes seems to be the missing piece for some of the couples, especially when children get in the picture. But even before children, I see that happening even before children.
That's a dynamic I have noticed a lot as well. The person executing also feels completely unappreciated because the person leading seems very frustrated, and the person executing is saying, I am doing everything. How can I be getting things wrong? Why do you never say thank you? Why are you taking me for granted? You no longer admire me. And the person who's leading thinks you've done the bare minimum,
Yeah.
because each of them is thinking, doing a really tough job. And I love the perspective you bring that it's the emotional load that both of them are carrying that leads both of them to think, I am doing something tougher. If they were to instead co-lead, if they were both captains of the ship and they were both crewmen of the ship, although it doesn't seem as intuitive, they would have both felt like they're sharing the load, whereas now it feels unfair to both of them.
Yes, absolutely. Because what I notice is then when they co-lead, they do connect, they do empathize, they do see the load of the other. And none of them wants to make the load of the other harder. Ultimately, we want to simplify the life of our partner. We don't want to make it more complicated. And yet, that dynamic of not co leading generates resentment on both parts. And then, instead of opening up the space for compassion and understanding, it opens up the stage for resentment and feeling isolated and feeling disconnected and feeling alone. I know it is counterintuitive. I do feel that couples oftentimes think that what the partner is asking, especially the partner who's leading, is for more time. I'm already doing so much in executing. You want even more time. I don't have more time. I'm already doing so much. And instead, I don't think it's a matter of more time. If that co-leading feeling happens, solutions are found that give both of them time and have each other's needs met.
Yes, definitely. We were speaking before recording, and you mentioned something that I find extremely interesting. And only recently I have started considering and running into more. And that is in terms of neurodivergence. You told me that there are times where one of the partners, at least, has some form of neurodivergence, like autism, like ADHD, and that is undiagnosed. And it could also be getting in the way of the communication of the couple. It could be creating misunderstandings. So I would love for you to elaborate on that because I find it fascinating. I've been running into this lately, and it makes a big difference.
I want to say from the get-go, it is a delicate topic because one thing that I also notice in the couples that sometimes happens is that we start labeling each other or diagnosing each other. I have a narcissistic wife or husband or partner. So one thing that I want to say right away is I encourage couples to stay away from diagnosing, from pathologizing the partner. That also hurts the relationship. Having said that, I do see sometimes that there may be a diagnosis that is already in place or sometimes is not in place. One of the two partners or both of them have never been diagnosed. At that point, naming a neurodivergence can become helpful because it adds compassion and self compassion. I'll give an example with forgetfulness, which is one aspect of ADHD. You would have maybe one partner complaining that their wife or husband or partner constantly forgets something that is very important for them. They make meaning, again, going back to the meaning making, they make meaning of that thing as you don't care about me. I'm not important for you. You remember all of these other things, work related, and you forget this small thing that I ask you to do every single day. It could be simple, right? Like leaving something around the house, closing a door or a window, you name it. Like it doesn't matter. It's forgetting something that I constantly remind you of. And then I hear both stories and I see that the person who's forgetting has good intentions and they feel ashamed. They feel really bad for forgetting that small thing. Forgetfulness is an aspect of ADHD. So it could be a real challenge for that person. Now, naming forgetfulness as I don't care about you, or naming forgetfulness as that's a challenge for the ways in which their brain was wired, or create the space for self compassion and taking responsibility, because that's another important piece. Do not think about diagnosis as a way of, oh, I have ADHD, so that means that I cannot fix it. No, that's not what I mean. Right? The opposite. Oh, now I understand why I keep forgetting. You know what? I'll put a sticker on the door so that I will help myself remember because I know that this is very important for my partner. Or I'll put a reminder on my phone so that I will remember because I know that this is very important for my partner. Now, will I always succeed? Maybe not. But just the fact that I am taking responsibility and I am creating some support for myself, that will do wonders. The partner will feel seen because they will see that I am taking responsibility for that forgetfulness and I'm trying to fix it as much as I can. Even if I don't succeed all the times, the partner will see the efforts, will see the intention, will see that we care. and we want to make it work. So this is kind of a small example of the ways in which neurodivergence, if it's not named, can be misunderstood as not caring, when instead it's a skill that I need to develop. And I'll say one last thing. This language can be used even without the presence of neurodivergence. Instead of calling each other's name or pathologizing, we can simply see a behavior as, okay, I have not developed that skill for so many reasons. Like none of us have all the skills fully developed, right? So I see that I haven't developed that skill, whatever that is, and I will be working towards developing it, because we can become who we want to be when we become aware, we are intentional, and we put the work in.
I think that it helps to think about it that way because not everybody necessarily has a diagnosis. Whether we have a diagnosis or we don't have a diagnosis, whether we are indeed neurodivergent or we aren't, it's really important to just take that responsibility and to be able to say, I am lacking in this. Because that's what it is. What you're saying is, I lack this skill, and that is being accountable, and that is like validating my partner's complaint or grievance or whatever it may be. And that is taking the responsibility to do something about it instead of saying, no, I am a good listener, but I'm telling you that I don't feel you listen. Whether that is because you've got ADHD and your mind is running somewhere else, or whether that is because you are dissociating because it's easier to be on your phone. And yes, you are listening, you are multitasking, quote unquote. I need you to give me eye contact and you're not doing it.
Yeah.
Whatever the background reason is, if I accept that, okay, you're asking me for one thing and I keep on not doing it and it's hurting your feelings, let's see what I can try to do about it, and let's see what you can do to support me in this. And then that creates a feeling of mutual understanding and we're working as a team.
Absolutely. And if it's okay, I would like to add one dimension, especially if the diagnosis is present but is undiagnosed. Sometimes what I notice is that if, let's say, I always had ADHD since I was a child, that generated a lot of issues, maybe at school, maybe at home, maybe I was a kid that was a troublemaker, and I was shamed. I was constantly in trouble. I was often punished. So that has created also a history of defending ourselves. And so sometimes there could be some layers that we could name attachment injuries that prevent us from taking responsibility, because taking responsibility brings us back to times where we were shamed for doing something wrong, or we were punished for doing something wrong. So sometimes it gets hard to simply say, hey, you know what? You're right. I do this. Let me see how I can fix it, which it seems so easy to do in some ways, but it isn't when there is maybe a complex history of being shamed or punished or isolated or judged because of some problems or behaviors that maybe were connected to ADHD, let's say. So I do want to name it because sometimes it surprises how hard it can be to take that step of taking responsibility. And again, doing it with compassion is a hard step.
So, what can couples start to do when they notice that there seems to be quite a big disconnect in the way that I perceive what's happening and in the way that you perceive what's happening, in my love language and the way that I need to be loved, and the way that you are giving me love, and the way that I naturally give you love and you don't accept it? What are some tools besides maybe the check ins that we discussed that couples can use in order to start to feel close again?
Slowing things down. I would say, sometimes I find that couples come and they feel a sense of urgency to fix the problem. And that sense of urgency can also get in the way. So, slowing things down and checking in with the effects of what we do and what we say on the other, and listening to our body, noticing in the moment when that happens, how do I feel? What's coming up for me? That also a way of slowing things down and not escalating fights.
A lot of people nowadays will say, and it is very true, that I am very disconnected from my body. I'm not there yet. So it's not very easy for me. I don't feel anything when this happens. And obviously, there's something that we feel, there's something that reacts in our body, but we are so disconnected from our body that we cannot feel it. And so these kinds of practices, they sound interesting and they sound good, but they sound very hard. So, how would you advise me or someone who says this kind of thing to get in touch with their body? And is that something that I can do now that I'm trying to work on getting closer with my partner? Is it something that I need to work on at my own time? Because you're like you said, there's this feeling of urgency. And even though I may be able to accept that, okay, if we've had problems for 6, 7 years, and I'm saying that specifically because research shows that couples come 6 to 7 years late to therapy. So if we haven't been well for 6, 7 years, I don't expect, okay, I can understand that we are not going to get better in a month. But if you are telling me to get in touch with my body, start to resolve my trauma, and go back to my childhood, oh my God, does that mean that as I do this work, we are not going to be getting closer to each other? More specifically to the somatic thing, is there a way that I, as one member of the couple, can start to get closer to my body so that then I can use this somatic connection and knowledge in the communication with my partner the way that you described?
I do see that all the times. It's so easy and sounds so cool to have somatic practices, and it can be so hard to actually integrate them. It does require some individual work and practice outside of the relational. And it is a skill that can be learned to be in touch with our bodies. One way of getting in touch with our body could be, what are some of the ways in which you feel connected or well? For some people, sports or playing an instrument can be ways in which we do understand what connecting with our bodies mean. Doing individual work while doing couples work can definitely help if we have the time and the resources to do it. Working with somebody becomes useful because an external observer can help the client identify the ways in which they connect or disconnect from their bodies. Again, going back to the example of the gym that you made earlier, when you work out and you do repeat the exercises, but you don't do them quite well, your trainer who's right there observing what you're doing and correcting you. So, in a sense, that's what the individual work with a therapist that is practicing somatic practices can be helpful, because the external person can help you identify the ways in which you are connecting or disconnecting with your bodies. And that's a way to get started. And then you keep practicing and noticing. I utilize, for instance, one technique that is called brain spotting, which is a somatic approach. And it does invite the client to observe the sensations in their bodies. What does your stomach feel like? Where are you feeling some tightness in your chest? Are you noticing dizziness? I start identifying specific body parts and guide them through the process of observing. And then if nothing comes up, that's okay. We don't need to get stuck with needing to find necessarily the body part, but it's an invitation to notice. And again, I think the more we do it, the better we become at noticing. It's a skill that needs to be learned. So we cannot take it for granted that we are aware of what's happening to our body, and trust, though, that we can learn it as we keep practicing it. It could be a simple body scan that I do every time I go to bed, before I fall asleep, or as soon as I wake up, or as soon as I finish work before I go home. So that would be a way of checking in with how my body feels. And I put that, okay, that's a transition, right? Anytime there is a transition in our schedule, I can put a 5 minutes body scan to slow myself down, check in, first of all, with my breathing. Am I breathing fast? Am I breathing slowly? Check my heart rate. Is it fast? Is it slow? Is it normal? Check my shoulders. Are they tense? Check my legs, my feet, my abdomen, my neck.
What I'm hearing throughout the entire conversation that we're having is if I want to work on my commitment to you as my partner, I need to work on my commitment first and foremost to myself, which a lot of times we leave behind. So we commit to the gym and we commit to work and we commit to our children, but then we struggle with committing to our partnership, and that is a reflection of how hard it is for us to commit to ourselves. It's so hard to upkeep a meditation practice. It's so hard to upkeep doing that one small 5-minute check in, either with ourselves or with our partner. It becomes so hard, but we can do so many other things that require much more commitment and much more time. We don't commit to ourselves, we don't commit to our well being. And then we wonder why we don't commit to our partnerships as well. So I love how this conversation has been going. And before we close, because we could be talking about this forever, yeah, definitely. I would like for you to pinpoint the one most important message that you would like to give couples who feel like they're stuck in a loop, who keep on running into the same arguments, keep on having the same fights, keep on feeling the same exact feelings about one another. What is something that couples can do if they can't remember everything that we said? What's one thing you want them to walk away with after listening to this episode?
Very difficult question. But one thing could be letting go of meanings and assumptions. Don't jump to conclusions. Go back to why are we together? What it is that we want out of this. And let's trust that each other has the best intentions. Recommit to the values and the purposes of the relationship and restart from there with a curious mindset rather than with a judgmental approach. And I know this is very hard because of what you said earlier, right? Couples come to us after 6 or 7 years of not feeling connected. So to be able to trust the other again after feeling hurt or many times, to be able to recreate a space of curiosity is a lot to ask. And yet we need to start somewhere if we want to try to make it work.
We can't make it work from a place of fear and from a place of having chosen to close down because of the hurt. Although it makes a lot of sense that if I feel hurt by you for 6 years, then I'm going to not want to take this risk. I'm going to have my guard up. At the same time, I can't expect that having my guard up, I can really get close to you. And that's the hardest part. And I think that's where the work that couples do with a professional becomes important. When a couple realizes that despite having tried, despite using strategies, despite having the good intention that both of us don't want this relationship, partnership, marriage to dissolve, we are still finding ourselves in a loop. Maybe there are things holding us back, and maybe we need to resolve the hurt and we need some help with that. We need some support, which oftentimes I think is taken as last resort. We must be really bad if we need to see a therapist, and we avoid seeing the therapist in time. Hence, we end up seeing them 6 to 7 years later, because we assign meaning to therapy as well, as if it is failure or it means that there's something wrong with us. And so I think everything that you mentioned basically just fits together very well. And you gave us the puzzle pieces and you laid them out with the steps that you just mentioned. So thank you for that amazing closing. Thank you for all the value that you shared with us throughout. Before we go, I would like for you to let my audience know where they can reach you, how they can keep in touch. If there's anything that you want to share with them, I'll definitely have any links that you want to share in the show notes. So whoever is listening, whoever is interested, you can find the links there. But do tell us where we can get in touch, where we can find you, follow you?
My website is www.lodovicaguidarelli.com. And the best way to reach me is either via text at 858-255-0895 or via email. And my email is lodovicaguidarellimft@gmail.com. And I'd be happy to offer a first initial session at half price for your listeners.
Oh, that is amazing. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'll definitely be sharing the links. And I think that anybody listening needs to jump at the opportunity to get in touch with you and continue this conversation. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.